You are listening to the So Now What podcast with Lana Manikowski, episode number 196.
So now what? These three words raced through my mind time and time again during my journey through fertility treatments. I tried desperately to have a child, but never was able. I yearned for a community to join that could understand my struggles. I couldn't find one, so I created one with the So Now What podcast. I love that you found us.
Hello, beautiful. I'm so glad you're here with me this week. My first episode of 2026. I took a few weeks off. Part of that was just busy stuff going on. I celebrate two Christmases, December 25th, like most of the Western world does. And then also I celebrate Christmas according to my Eastern Orthodox faith on January 7th. So our holiday season just wrapped up. And then I also had a lot of new clients who signed up for coaching, and we're getting started in figuring out how we are going to start 2026 and approach this year differently. Women who are done letting the fact that they didn't have children shape how they see themselves, stop believing that you are a failure because fertility treatments failed. So if this is your first episode of the So Now What podcast, welcome. I show up here almost every week to help you figure out what you can do to create this life that you love, how to feel connected to this life that looks so different than you thought, how to feel proud of who you are, even if your dream of motherhood did not happen or unfold the way that you thought it was going to be. That's the conversation that I personally could not find when my 7-year fertility treatment journey ended without a baby. And that is why this work and my coaching program, Thrive After Infertility, is so important to me and has helped shape the future of so many women. So anyway, welcome. I'm really glad that you're here. And today I want to talk about something that gives language to what many of you might already be living, even if you've never had words for it or the opportunity to contemplate it. It is called post-traumatic growth. Now, before I explain what that is and we dive into it this episode, I want to pause for a moment and invite you into this term because this isn't something that I just want you to listen to passively. And when you hear the phrase post traumatic growth, what happens inside of you? Like, take a quick minute right now and just check in with yourself. Are you feeling resistant? Like, no, I did not sign up to grow from something that this traumatic. Do you feel skeptical or confused? Like, that sounds psychological and not very helpful. Or do you feel some sort of recognition of, yeah, like I feel like what I've gone through is traumatic. Something about me feels different, but I don't know how to explain it. So there's no right answer. I just want you to notice, what's your reaction? Maybe it's something else. Because the reaction that you're having right now tells us something important about where you are right now. And to understand why, we need to talk about what you and I and so many of us have actually lived through. So if you've ever looked back at your fertility journey and thought, I am not the same person I was before this, you aren't imagining this. If you ever wondered whether fertility treatments leaving you childless actually count as trauma, the answer is yes. Not because it sounds so dramatic from the outside, but because of how long you have lived inside this trauma. You didn't just like one day decide, oh, I'm just casually hoping for a baby. You likely have been dreaming of this opportunity for the majority of your life. You probably planned around it. You probably, if like me, chose a partner that you thought would be a really good dad. You maybe bought a house in anticipation of your parenthood happening the way that you thought. You organized your life around a future of becoming a mother. You made decisions with the assumption that eventually this was going to happen for you. And this was going to work. And that assumption of motherhood shaped everything. And you probably consented to medical treatments that required you to trust systems and procedures that you didn't fully understand. You tolerated these procedures and daily injections and a belly that looked like a pincushion that you didn't know what that would feel like. You learned what it was like to wait for a phone call or your phone to ring or email to come through on your chart that in an instant could change everything. And then slowly just waiting for this life that you thought was going to happen, waiting for that next cycle, waiting for a transfer, waiting for a positive pregnancy test or a baby to be at the end of this journey. And for many women that are listening here today, that lasted for years. And this is important stuff that we're going to talk about because while life was happening around you and things were happening, your future felt like it was oriented around trying and maybe in this holding pattern. So when fertility treatments ended without a baby, it wasn't just heartbreaking, it was disorienting because this structure that your life had been organized around just seemed to like boom disappear. And this moment that many of us go through does not get supported. It does not get acknowledged. And for so many years, your life was in that holding pattern. Even if you were still working and maybe going on occasional trips here and there, or still being social in your circles, so much of what your future thinking was based on was the fertility treatment outcome working for you. So when that chapter closes, you're not just grieving the baby, you're not just grieving the loss of motherhood, you are grieving a roadmap. Literally, you are grieving this sense of direction. And what's left behind isn't just sadness. It's a very specific question, a very common question. If you've listened to this podcast before, or if you've read my book, so now what? Like that is like at so many points in our crossroad. And that question is where post-traumatic growth actually comes in. So post-traumatic growth does not mean infertility was this lesson that you needed to hear or that it is something that has this rosy reason for happening. It wasn't good for you. It doesn't mean this happened because, God wanted you to see something else differently. At least that's my belief of it. And it doesn't mean that you're supposed to feel grateful that you went through it or wiser because you went through it. What it does is explain what happens after the future you were planning on building is no longer coming. I did not come up with the terminology or the concept of post-traumatic growth, but there's two main researchers who studied post-traumatic growth, and they described trauma as a seismic event, not because it's dramatic, because it shakes the foundation your life was expected to be built on. So think of it like this. If a building is well constructed and an earthquake hits and the building is still standing, there's no reason to rebuild it. But if the ground shifts enough that the structure then cracks or collapses, you don't just, move back into that building and pretend nothing happened. You rebuild it. And childlessness after infertility is one of those ground shifting experiences, not because your life before was bad or wasn't well constructed, but because it was built on an expectation that did not happen. So post traumatic growth isn't about fixing something that was broken. It's about deciding how you want to rebuild once this structure is no longer in this solidarity that it was in before. So the structure that you were living in no longer holds this life and this expectation that you thought was going to be part of it. So most women at this point know this is your outcome. You're not still wondering what's next. You know that this is where your future is pointed to a life without kids. So you're probably sitting here listening like, how do I live the rest of my life without feeling like I'm always going to be disappointed? How do I move forward without pretending that this dream that I had matters and what I did in the years and the investment and the emotion that I put into this journey through fertility treatments was not forgotten about. What I find most women want is to feel as though life is connected again and, that they want to be like the person they were before fertility treatments. And I'm sorry to say that that life is no longer the life that is ahead of you. You aren't the same person you were. That version of you lived inside a future that didn't happen with expectations that weren't your outcome. So, what you probably want next is okay, like, where do I start? Where do I stand on this roadmap? Like, where is my you start here arrow? It's like, you are here. You want to go here. You want to know where is that starting point. You want to know where is that sense of forward movement. And you want to move forward while still honoring that part of you that is grieving. You want to move forward, not forgetting all that you did and all that you tried, not minimizing it, not erasing it, and not rewriting your story just so that when you tell people that you wanted to become a mom, it didn't happen, they feel comfortable. You want to know that growth matters. And what I'm going to tell you is it matters because it makes movement without erasing the past possible. This is where the research helps normalize what many of you are already noticing. So, when researchers studied post traumatic growth, they found that growth often shows up in a few specific areas. And it doesn't always show up at once, it's not on this like specific timeline. The first is inner strength, like not the kind where you feel strong, but the kind where you can survive uncertainty, you can survive disappointment, and not know what's coming next. You didn't choose to learn that. This journey through infertility taught you that. The second is openness to new possibilities. And this doesn't mean that you are excited about the alternatives to motherhood. It means that you are allowing yourself to imagine a future that isn't defined by you being a mom, something that isn't defined only by what didn't happen for you. And the third area is relationships. Many women notice they want different kinds of connections now, maybe more genuine ones, more honest ones, less performative ones. And they stop forcing themselves to stay in relationships or friendships that require them to shrink or to explain themselves. And the fourth is an appreciation for life, not gratitude for loss, not like, oh my God, I am so glad I went through 7 years of fertility treatments and left without a baby, but a sharper awareness that time and energy matter. And you want to use this time and energy of yours intentionally. The fifth one is meaning, not a replacement for purpose or for motherhood, but a decision about what matters now based on who you've become. And I want to be really clear about something here. Growth is not required. There is absolutely no one telling you that you have to grow beyond what you've experienced. There's no moral obligation to grow from infertility. You didn't earn bonus points for doing this well, but growth is just simply an option. So if you're still regulating your nervous system, still feel like you're stabilizing your life, still trying to catch your breath, that is not a problem. Growth comes from you saying, okay, I'm ready. Doesn't mean that you have to know what ready means or that there is some perfect outline of readiness, because you don't have to wait for the grief in your life to disappear before you get started. Grief stops just being the only placeholder in your life. And if you're feeling like that is the main thing that you are feeling right now, that is not a problem. You are grieving something, but as you continue to develop your pathway through post traumatic growth, grief stops being the only place your life lives. And I think it's hard to put your arms around that because we don't hear a lot of people talk about that. And that is why I started doing this work that I do. That is why I started Thrive After Infertility, my coaching program, because women need to be fixed. I didn't think that they needed to be on this like speedy trajectory to feeling better faster. But I started my coaching program and the work that I do because so many women were left without guidance once fertility treatments ended. The clinic moved on. The calls stopped. The friends kept having their babies. Life kept going, but no one was teaching you how to reorganize your life after that long term holding pattern ended and after that dream of motherhood quit becoming a reality. So, the work that I do in my coaching program is rooted around concepts like post traumatic growth because I want to help you and my clients focus on this process of reorienting with where you are now, helping you plot that starting point, helping you decide what matters to you now, helping you build a way forward in a way that feels honest and grounded and safe to you because time does not do that. If you have finished your fertility treatments more than, say, 3 months ago, you will see that the days don't turn into this automatic okay with what happened. Avoidance doesn't do that. A lot of people think, like, oh, if I just cut out anyone in my life who is pregnant and has kids, I'm going to insulate myself from feeling the grief that I'm feeling. So while I think that might be something that gives you temporary relief, what I see in the clients that I work with, that is not a long-term thing to help you really create this life that you feel connected to, where you drop the shame and you stop feeling like a failure because fertility treatments failed. So what creates movement is learning how to work with your nervous system, how to identify your values and the choices that you want to make that can help you wake up every day feeling like, yeah, this is where I didn't expect to be, but this is feeling like where I want to be or where I want to go. Because your life without children and a life that continues on after fertility treatment fails should not feel like a consolation prize. And it doesn't have to be the life that is lived in comparison to motherhood, because the life that you are going to create without the children you dreamed of really matters. So if you're listening and wondering whether you're too late to figure this out, you are not. There's absolutely no timeline to post traumatic growth. And you don't grow because enough time has passed. You grow when you feel ready or you feel safe enough to stop bracing and start choosing. So, if this episode and this concept of what post traumatic growth is identified as and what it is based on stirred up some sort of recognition in you, like, yeah, I want to figure this out, that is a really good sign. It means that you're listening to yourself. And one of the things I believe to my core is that we as women, we know we have such this empowered sense inside of us to know what we are seeking, but sometimes we just don't trust that we should listen to it. So listening is always the first step toward building this life that feels meaningful without motherhood. So I hope that you have a beautiful week. I love you. And remember that it's never too late to discover your meaning. I'll talk to you next week.
Hey, real quick, I just wanted to tell you about an awesome resource I created. If you have ever found yourself in conversations with people, or maybe people offering you suggestions about what you should do to become a mom, it's called the Top 27 Things People Say When You're Childless and How to Respond. You can get your copy free at lanamanikowski.com/things people say.